Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I love my faith, but I just wish the Pope was cuter? Well, fear not, because Lysengal has answered your prayers. Hello everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here, bringing you a spotlight for the servant with thighs as thick as the good book itself, Pope Johanna. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers and how you utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 5-star servants. So if you're ready to be absolved of your impure thoughts, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring my bell, so you can catch all of these spotlight videos as they go up, and you can help out the channel. And now, on to Johanna's stats. Johanna has a max HP of 15,592 and a max attack of 10,126, which becomes 11,138 due to her ruler class modifier. Johanna has very high HP even among the ruler class, but very low attack both as a ruler and for an SSR servant overall. When it comes to her command cards, she has 4 hits on her quick card, 3 hits on her arts, 3 hits on her buster, and 5 hits on her extra card. She has an NP gain rate of 0.55% and a star rate of 9.9%. Both Johanna's NP gain and star generating are just about average, and her stat spread is almost purely defensive, as is common for the ruler class. Taking a look at her skills, Johanna's first skill is Saint of Imaginations, rank A. This skill increases one ally's crit star absorption on their arts cards for 3 turns, between 3,000 and 5,000%. It'll also increase the crit strength of those arts cards for 3 turns between 50 and 100%, and it'll generate between 5 and 10 crit stars every turn for 3 turns, all of these effects depending on level. Her second skill is the Shunned Papal Procession, rank C. This skill increases the party's arts card effectiveness for 3 turns between 10 and 20%, grants the party debuff immunity for 1 time, reduces the party's damage taken for 3 turns between 500 and 1000, and it charges her own NP gauge between 20 and 30%, all of these effects depending on level. And finally, Johanna's last skill is Disputation of the Pope, rank EX. This skill increases the party's NP gauge every turn for 3 turns between 10 and 20%, and it also increases the party's attack for 3 turns, also between 10 and 20%, both of these effects depending on level. For her passives, Johanna just has 2. First up, she has Magic Resistance rank EX, which increases her debuff resistance by 25%, and she has Territory Creation rank A, which increases her arts card effectiveness by 10%. Moving on to her deck and Noble Phantasm, Johanna has an Arts Quick deck with Quick, Arts Buster, and an Arts Noble Phantasm. Johanna's Noble Phantasm is Legendum Papal Thronus. It's an AoE arts attack that deals damage to all enemies, with a damage modifier between 450 and 750% depending on NP level. It also increases Johanna's own damage against evil alignment enemies by 50% for a turn, and it inflicts buff block on all enemies for 1 time. It also deals additional damage against enemies with the Man attribute between 150 and 200% depending on overcharge. As a ruler, Johanna is the complete opposite of a foreigner like Cuckoo when it comes to ascension mat requirements. For the most part, she only needs monuments and skill gems rather than other mats. For level ascension, Johanna just needs pieces and monuments from each class, while for her skills, she's going to need skill gems from each class, as well as 12 Spiritrons and 15 eggs per skill. Like all major religious figures, Johanna is very controversial, and not just because of her lore, but her gameplay as well. Even after hours of playtesting her, I'm still not entirely sure if she's good or not. So before we even get into analyzing her kit, I just want to add the disclaimer that Johanna is one of the most "your mileage may vary" type of servants out there. But with that out of the way, as a Catholic who has a very distinct fetish for fashionable air-headed Yadus, I'm here to provide my 100% definitely unbiased opinion. As far as stats go, Johanna follows the ruler template to a T. She has insanely high HP, which when combined with her resistance to all major classes, makes her extremely tanky. And she has decent star generating and NP gain. All of this, of course, at the cost of having an abysmal attack stat. Although, with the 10% class damage modifier for rulers, her low attack is made up for just a little bit. Johanna's first skill, Saint of Imaginations, increases an ally's crit star absorption and crit damage on arts cards significantly, and it generates 10 stars a turn for 3 turns. The interesting thing about this skill is just how large the scaling on these effects is. 100% crit damage for 3 whole turns is massive, as is 5,000% star weight. That's enough to get even berserkers and foreigners critting consistently. The 10 stars per turn is also akin to a Maximate Broken 2030, and the uptime on this skill is also tremendously good with a cooldown of only 6 turns. arts. All in all, these are some massive buffs with high uptime. But of course, the fact that it only works on arts cards makes it a lot more situational than just a generic crit buff. But really, you should only be running Johanna in arts teams anyway, so it's not as restrictive a condition as it seems at first. This gives Johanna the ability to fully support an arts crit servant with everything they need in just one skill. And it's also worth mentioning that she can use it on herself if you want to use her more offensively. Johanna also has another team-friendly buff skill in Shun Papal Procession. This skill increases the party's arts card effectiveness by 20%, grants them debuff immunity and damage reduction, and it also charges Johanna's own NP by 30%. The numbers on this skill aren't anywhere as eye-opening as her first skill, but it's still an all-around solid set of buffs. 20% arts up for the party is nothing to scoff at, and the debuff immunity can be life-saving in challenging content. The 30% self-battery is the main draw of the skill, however, since it gives Johanna a way of quickly and easily accessing her Noble Phantasm for additional damage and utility. And speaking of NP batteries, did you think this would be her only one? Of course not, silly. Johanna is an art servant in the year 2025, so she's loaded to the brim with NP charge. Her final skill, Disputation of the Pope, is a 20% charge for the party that activates at the end of each turn for 3 turns. It also works as a charisma, giving the party 20% additional attack. As far as charisma skills go, this one is as good as they can get. The attack buff stacks nicely with her arts buff, and 20% charge every turn for the party can help significantly with both NP looping and in challenge quests where consistent access to Noble Phantasms is necessary. It's a lot of NP charge, especially if you combine it with servants like Lady Avalon and Tamamo. The only real downside is the insane 8-turn cooldown. Hopefully that gets buffed sometime soon. For skill leveling, go with Papal Procession first, just because immediate charge is better than a delayed battery, followed by Disputation of the Pope, and then her crit skill last. For pens, go with mana loading, then skill reloading, which is especially needed for her third skill, and then you can grab crit up if you're using her offensively. Johanna's NP is an AoE arts attack that deals additional damage against man attribute enemies, buff blocks all enemies, and increases her damage against evil aligned enemies by 50%. On its own, this isn't a very powerful NP. For a primarily support-based servant, it sucks that her Noble Phantasm doesn't have much utility to it, outside of the buff block, which is really situational. And damage-wise, it's one of the weakest AoE NPs in the game. Even EO at NP 1 is stronger. Thankfully, she does get bonus damage against evil alignment and manservants, which are both fairly common attributes, so in those cases her NP damage fares much better. And I should mention while we're in this section that Johanna can NP loop with Castoria, but she isn't very good at it. And considering that we just got EO recently, who's a god tier arts looper who also happens to be an arts ruler, there really isn't any circumstance where you should be taking Johanna over her as a farming servant. That said though, farming is not Johanna's bread and butter. What she does do excellently is work as an offensive support, capable of significantly buffing your team's DPS while contributing damage of her own. Johanna's buffs are exceptionally strong, especially when it comes to supporting arts crit servants. The high uptime on Saint of Imaginations allows her to provide some of the best crit support in the game to art servants, even more so if you can lower the cooldown further. Johanna is also flexible in that she can use the skill on herself if needed to significantly increase her own DPS. Her NP battery is also another incredibly useful benefit for the party, especially if they rely on NP spam, which is very common in art setups. She fits right into a number of stall teams that want to have 100% uptime on their NPs, like Mosh and Merlin. Even offensive teams that like to NP spam frequently, like ones built around Kagetora or Kuro or Vlad, benefit from the consistent NP charge. And while 20% attack up and arts up aren't huge numbers individually, they do stack multiplicatively, and it equates to basically a 50% team-wide buff for 3 turns, thus making her a really good inclusion in double sub DPS setups that are hyper offensive. So even though her buffs aren't as strong as pure supports like Castoria or Vich, Johanna makes up for it with the level of flexibility and versatility that she has. The best way to describe Johanna's playstyle is she isn't a servant that's worth building around, but she's excellent at being the final piece that so many good teams need to gel together. Just keep in mind that she does have some limitations when it comes to her long cooldowns on some of her skills and her situational damage output. And since we're on the topic of team comps, like I said, Johanna can work well on nearly any arts team. She has excellent synergy with stall servants like Mosh and Lady Avalon, where she can help them maintain high uptime on their own NPs with her NP battery, but she works just as well when supporting arts crit servants like Kagetora and Melusine. Johanna's Bond CE is My Thoughts, My Records. It increases the party's damage against evil and man attribute enemies by 15%. It's a little bit too situational for me to recommend it most of the time, so instead I suggest giving her CEs that can produce crit stars like 2030, Annual General Meeting, or Commentator of Flowers. For command codes, star generating codes like Priestess of the Silver Key are also very strong. Overall, Johanna is a good sub DPS or off support, but her mileage with you may vary. She does an excellent job of slotting into pretty much any arts team and rounding it out well, with excellent buffing and decent damage. She can provide good utility to stall teams and also be an excellent crit DPS enabler for arts teams. However, her supportive capabilities are well below that of pure supports like Castoria or Lady Avalon, and her DPS is highly situational. She also struggles with cooldowns on her NP battery, and she can be easily replaced by better servants. So all in all, Johanna gets a B+ from me. If you're someone who primarily uses arts teams and doesn't have many support options available, you will likely get a ton of use out of Johanna, as she does her job as a sub DPS very well. However, for those of you who've been playing for a while, you're already likely swimming in art supports that can perform whatever niche role you need far better. And those are my thoughts on Johanna. I know some people think she's horrible, but honestly, I really like her, and I think she's a bit underrated. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over in our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter, and I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.